We used to live as merchants. In the old days, they were peddlers. But ever since World War I and II broke out, we brought in what humanity called corporations. And through that, corporate culture arose. Then what does a corporation do? A corporation is something that must grow unconditionally. You cannot call someone who merely sells to make a living a corporation. That is just a merchant. However, as everyone arose while equipped with knowledge, corporate culture began to emerge. Then, how far does a corporation go? Let's point this out and move forward. What kind of entity is a corporation? I said a corporation is something that grows. Up until after World War I and II, South Korean society was in an era of growth. Because it was an era of growth, the nation grew. Then, what is the nation? It is a corporation. The nation is, so to speak, a global corporation. If we talk about human society, there are nations within humanity, and a country that grows as one nation within humanity means that the country is also a corporation. Then you opened a denomination under the name of religion, gathered believers, and gathered to do spiritual work. But did this place grow, or did it collapse and stay right there? Then what is this? A corporation. Anything that grows is a corporation. Next, our enterprises thought that only they were corporations. Corporations have all grown. Because it was an era of growth, they grew. This is what is being shown here in South Korea. It showed everything from the very bottom, how it grows from the ground up. This thing that grows is a corporation. Then, it grows, but how far does it grow? It grows up to 70%. Up to 30% is called evolution, and up to 70% is called growth. By when did all of this growth up to 70% happen? Through competing with each other. The corporations that survived did so by December 21st, 2012, according to the laws of nature. Then, is it a growth period from the year 2013 onward? It is over. They call that basic growth. Basic growth. The 70% arising is basic growth. Once basic growth is finished, if you try to grow further from then on, heaven will now press down on it. That is why, starting from that time, corporations all went bankrupt, and only a few are left. Still, there are corporations that endure. If you keep going like that, all of these will end up being pressed down by heaven and go bankrupt. Then within culture, the Olympics grew too. The World Cup that was asked about earlier, its organization grew as well, right? This means humanity met its growth period and has fully grown. They have grown, but what kind of era is it now? Now, we make this distinction. When people introduce themselves by asking, "What do you do?" they say they are businessmen, entrepreneurs. They don't call themselves corporate figures anymore. Now, almost everyone has changed. They say they are someone doing business, a businessman. In this way, all of us in South Korea have turned into businessmen. The name has all changed to businessman. Thus, one becomes a businessman above being a corporate person. Then should a businessman do business, or should they do corporate work? Business. A businessman must do business, and a corporate person must do corporate work. A corporation is about growing, and business is about doing business. To give you the answer first, business means widely benefiting society. This is what a businessman is. Since you have fully grown, you must do business with that great power. You've grown this much? Then you must do a business of this size. If you've grown that much, you must do a business that big. This is business where the law of mass operates. Big business, small business, and tiny business, everyone involved is a businessman. Then, if you do business, you won't get scolded. No one falls into difficulty. But instead of doing business, what have you been doing for the past 10-odd years since 2013? While everything changed under the name of businessman, for over 10 years, rather than saying they are doing corporate work, they use the word businessman while moving toward being mere merchants. Since 10-odd years have passed, they are doing merchant work again. Merchants are called shopkeepers, so they cannot receive respect. Among the commoners, a merchant becomes the lowest of the low. Do you think God will leave you alone when you commit such acts after being raised by Him? The reason our people are suffering tribulations lies precisely right here. If you're a businessman, you should do business, but you don't know what business is. I taught you just a moment ago. If you divide it largely into 3 parts, we must now move on to education. We must move from equipping ourselves with knowledge to education. Then, what is education? Business. What is welfare? Business. What about culture? Business. We brought in this knowledge called welfare. What we did as welfare up until now was just playing around with it as knowledge. What we called education was also taking what was brought in as knowledge, thinking this knowledge was education, and playing around with it. As for culture, we think that because we did cultural activities, we did cultural business. It was cultural activity. Activity means absorbing it while performing that activity and laying down our foundation. Then what needs to happen for this to become a business? We need to raise this activity or this knowledge we are handling up by one level into a new paradigm. Since when did we hear this word? It's been over 20 years for us. Nearly 30 years, right? Since when? Since the millennium. Since the millennium, the words new paradigm came out from the mouths of our people. It went out on broadcasts, and knowledgeable people said new paradigm, so much that it left calluses on our ears. When that word was being said, I was in the mountains, living like a beggar. I didn't learn that word from society, but I was in the mountains listening to everything being said in the world. Yet, they say new paradigm, while taking something that was placed like this, putting it like that, and calling it a new paradigm. This is not a new paradigm. When you take what we played with inside knowledge, create a different dimension above it, and bring it up, this is what is called a new paradigm. Inside knowledge, inside the culture of knowledge, inside the welfare of knowledge, when you find a new answer and place it on top, that is called a new paradigm. Therefore, it is time to contribute to the co-prosperity of humanity with this new paradigm. We were taught this from childhood so that it would sink into our very bones. But you have thrown all of that away. So what happens if you find a new paradigm? It becomes an educational business. You were told to do educational business with this. Also, you were told to find a new paradigm for welfare and turn it into a welfare business, not within the framework of knowledge produced by humanity. Then, for culture too, you must find a new paradigm and give rise to a cultural business. In the future, a culture of all new paradigms must come out so that humanity can shine and live like human beings. And we must receive education by creating educational programs with a new paradigm. Only then, since we have received education on top of absorbing knowledge, do we become complete human beings. What is that? It refers to Hongik Ingan, widely benefiting humanity. Hongik Ingan refers to a complete human being. Therefore, when Hongik Ingans now live as Hongik Ingans, they will contribute to the co-prosperity of humanity and become Hongik leaders. They will create an idealized world, Iwasegye, bring about an era of human peace, and achieve human peace. This is what that means. Why are the people who are supposed to do that unable to do a single bit of that work, even after fully growing up? Because they do not know, they cannot do it. Lastly, let's talk simply about just one thing. Religion is not faith. Religion is literally gyo, religion teaching, right? It uses the character meaning to teach. Teaching and learning is what is called religion. Then there are schools. There are two kinds of gyo. A place that teaches knowledge is called a school, hakgyo. A place that explores knowledge. There are two kinds of gyo, and because we equipped ourselves with knowledge when we were young, we study at school. Then, since we come out into society after studying at school, religion must teach us how to learn about society. Those who have awakened to the principles of living rightly in society must teach the laws of living rightly in society. At one time, even in our marriage culture, monks and pastors stepped in to officiate a lot. They intervened in the marriage culture as well. Do you get married while going to school? You do it after coming out into society. Then you are now starting to live in society. But what did they tell you to do in the efficient speech? To live until your black hair turns into green onion roots. That was done in the Joseon dynasty. Did they still do that lately? What this means is, whether in sickness or in sadness, this is how it changed. The one in South Korean society changed. Whether in joy, sadness, or sickness, I will love you, live together with you, and not abandon you. But how do people act now? They abandon everything. I mean, despite making that promise, they abandon it all. Families are all fracturing right now. If you told them to live that way, you should have them come to our denomination from then on to learn the method of living that way. Make them promise like that and keep teaching and leading them. That is religion. Continuously researching the laws of living rightly in society while also equipping oneself, learning, and going forward this way. Only then can you live your whole life very happily. Thus, the social gyo that was entrusted with that responsibility and duty, that is religion. What truth means is the law of living rightly. This is the truth. The law of humans living rightly, this is called the truth. So the law of a dog living rightly, this is not it. A dog lives well as long as you give it food. The law of a human being living rightly is what is called the truth. Then, since human beings living rightly means living within society, teaching this well, this is called character education and social education. Education on living rightly. From now on, as you meet many connections, meet many cultures, and meet many environments, learning the laws of how person and person live rightly is called the truth. Truth is not up in the heavenly kingdom. You must find and live by the truth of the world where people live. It refers to the law of living rightly. You have never created a single such education until now. This now becomes educational material. But whom did they assign this to? The people who were taught while being beaten with sticks. The ones who were beaten with sticks while being told that they were born on this earth with a historical mission and must contribute to the co-prosperity of humanity. Those are the baby boomers and Generation X. Generation X wasn't beaten much with sticks, but they were given disciplinary punishment. Gahap. Given disciplinary punishment very embarrassingly. Think back to when you received that disciplinary punishment. That tiny little thing stood on top of the desk, kneeling down and holding a punishment pose. You were raised that way. So where did all that spirit go? How many years apart are these people? 12 years. 12 years. 12 years from the baby boomer dragon zodiac year. Then it would be the rabbit zodiac year. Then who are the juniors below them? 12 years from the dragon year. Then they become the juniors below that. By doing 12 years and 12 years like this, you were taught for 24 years. You were born on this earth carrying the historical mission of the nation. This means you are researchers right now. Since you were born as researchers of humanity, all talents will be nurtured within you. So research all cultures while growing up with your respective talents. It was told that you must find a new paradigm. But is there one person who did? There is none. They didn't research. When culture was given, they fell into the culture, floundered, and played around. When knowledge was given, they learned the knowledge, played around thinking it was cleverness and the answer, and while playing around like that, what happens today? Those descendants over there, right? The digital generation. These digital ones are not juniors. They are descendants. There is a law that organizes the future from now on. All ancestors who came to this world up until now are considered of the Joseon dynasty era. And these people born in South Korea, starting from the baby boomers, are the highest elders of humanity. If we research this, succeed, teach, and lead humanity, you are the highest ancestors of humanity. This now changes. In the spiritual realm as well, the highest gods have now received physical bodies and been born on this earth. And it is to these people that it was said, "You were born on this earth carrying the historical mission of the nation." These are not someone's descendants. These people grow up and achieve world peace. You are the highest gods, the Hongik leaders who create the idealized world, Iwasege. Therefore, nurturing this now is what God is doing.